Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Williamsburg City Council meeting of October 14th. Ms. Felico, if you'd call the roll, please.
Mr. Rogers.
Here.
Mayor Pons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Here.
Mr. Maslin.
Here.
Okay, and on the phone we have Councilwoman Ramsey, but there's make a motion to approve a consideration to participate remotely.
Yes, I make a motion that City Council approve Councilwoman Ramsey's request to participate remotely.
Second.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Mr. Maslin.
Aye.
Welcome, Barbara.
Okay. Here.
Yep, we can hear you. So next on the agenda is the minutes from previous meetings. Are there any changes or alterations?
There are several revisions which have been made.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll go ahead and move to approve all three council minutes from August 9th, August 12th, and September 9th.
Second.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey.
Aye.
Mayor Pons.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent.
Aye.
Mr. Maslin.
Aye.
Okay, that takes us to matters of special privilege, and today we're pleased to honor Mr. Dandrup. If you'd like to join me at the podium. Welcome, sir. Fine. So as you know, periodically, the City Council has the honor of recognizing city employees that have done an outstanding job for the city, and today we have Major Dandrup with us, and so I'd like to go ahead and read that if I may. Major Dandrup has faithfully and honorably served the citizens of Williamsburg for over 20 years as a member of the Williamsburg Police Department. Major Dandrup owned his people skills as in a former career in retail management. I'd like to know what that was. He has incredible ability to connect with people and build consensus. He has combined his talents with a strong desire to serve others in a career of law enforcement. He visited Williamsburg as a young person and wanted to live here one day. Major Dandrup's dedication to excellence is in keeping with the best traditions of public service in the city of Williamsburg. It is evidence in his passion for assisting public and his fellow employees. He strives to be a problem solver and to improve the lives of others through caring and compassionate approach. Early in his career, Major Dandrup saw the importance of crisis intervention program, which he was instrumental in implementing for the Williamsburg Police Department. As a member of the Williamsburg Police Department hostage negotiator, he utilized his skills to de-escalate situations to the best outcome to be achieved. As Major of Professional Service Bureau, one of his responsibilities is the hiring of employees. He takes a vested interest in every person that he hires and often becomes a mentor to them during their career. Major Dandrup is also in charge of the public parking unit. Is instrumental in the implementation of the Ambassador program, changing the direction of parking from one of enforcement to heightened public engagement, many times assisting the public in finding parking accommodations and directions rather than issuing a ticket. Many of us enjoy that, so thank you. Major Dandrup never forgets what's inspired him to become a police officer. He found interacting with the public every chance he has, whether it's in handing out Slurpee coupons to children, ringing the bell at Christmas, or collecting items for the school supply drive. Major Dandrup is an exemplary employee and is vital to the success of Williamsburg Police Department. He is hereby recognized for his dedication and excellence to the city of Williamsburg. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. In reference to my experience as a child, I just wanted to say that I want to thank my mom and dad. It's a real honor to get this award, and over 50 years ago, it's hard to believe, my mom and dad from New Jersey took my sister and I here to Williamsburg. As a young child, I literally fell in love with Williamsburg, the history and the city. And I told them I was going to move here one day. And of course, they didn't take me seriously, but sure enough, I got married and in '86, and we've been here ever since. So this award means a lot to me, only because I've been connected with this community for well over 30 years. I lived in the city for 30 years. It's a source of pride for me that I live in the city and that I also work for the city. So I feel like whatever contributions I may have given over the years, that I feel like Williamsburg community has returned to me manyfold. So I deeply appreciate that. Just want to recognize my wife and my 2 daughters. 2 of my 5 grandchildren are here, for putting up with my schedule over the years and supporting me. I really appreciate it. I want to thank the council members, Mayor Pons and Chief Dunn for being here for me today. And then the Williamsburg Police Department. I consider it an honor to be associated with the men and women of the Williamsburg Police Department. I see what they do every day, trying to help the community, and I'm really proud to be a member of this team. And I could even elevate that a little bit further to citywide, because the city team is just as important. And through the years, I've had many connections with city people, teammates, if you will, to help serve the community. So again, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you very much for being here, Major Dandrup, and all that you do. It's very special. We're going to advance in the agenda the city manager's report to help expedite and not keep some people here longer than they need to. So, Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of council, as you all know, a couple of months ago, we took the step of forming a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and part of their charge was to develop a mission statement as quickly as possible so that they can get their work underway. And I'm proud to say that they have done a tremendous amount of work in a very short period of time. And so we've asked them to come today and present their mission statement. And I believe the Vice Chair, Mr. Adam Canaday, is going to come to the mic and read the statement for you and take any questions.
Welcome, Adam, and I just want to take a moment to also thank some of the members for being here. We have Mr. Colson, Mr. Zhang, Ms. Hill, Ms. Casey Rutland, and the Chair, Bobby Braxton. So thank you for being here. Welcome, Mr. Canaday.
Thank you for having me. On behalf of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, this is our mission statement that I'd like to read off to you. The initial mission of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee includes, but is not limited to, A, uncovering and acknowledging the truth about the city of Williamsburg's racial history by understanding, assessing, and dissecting the pervasive role that slavery, racial injustices, systemic racism, and racial biases have played in defining our community today. And B, critically examining the ways the statutes, policies, and practices of the city of Williamsburg have disadvantaged and disenfranchised its citizens of African ancestry. And C, offering remedies to make amends that will foster racial healing, equity, and reconciliation. That's our mission statement.
Well, thank you very much. It does certainly sound like you've done a lot of good work on the committee, and I think while it may be foreign to some people what we were trying to accomplish, I suspect and get the sense that you guys and gals are really on the way to making some good positive effects.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anybody else have any comments?
I don't have any questions. As council's liaison to this committee, I'll just echo what Mr. Trivette and the mayor has stated as obviously this committee put in a tremendous amount of work in a short period of time to come up with this mission statement. And the excitement and the passion that you see with this committee is really positive as the committee moves forward with the tasks that they've outlined in their mission statement. So thank you to each and every one of the members.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So for the public that's not on the committee, what's the best way for them to give input to the committee?
We're actually we have a web page right now, so we're going to be putting pieces of information there, and we'll further outline those ways for them to get in contact with us. It'll have each and every one of our position who we are and such from there, so that way they also have a voice as well.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No questions, Vice Chair Candidate. Thank you very much for your leadership on the committee. Only a comment to you and your fellow committee members. I can't thank you all enough for your work. I think you all will be able to build upon what other communities have done in this way. Asheville and Evanston are two that I've studied, but really a lot of states and communities and counties are considering this type of work. And so I think the work you all are doing, people will look towards Williamsburg in the future to see how you identified instances in the past in which there are racial injustices, and especially that third tier in which you come forward with recommendations on how to reconcile. So I'm very excited to follow along with your work over the next year, and thank you again.
Thank you.
All of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
All right.
Mr. Trivette, is there anything else as part of your report?
No, sir. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, so that takes us now to public hearings. First on the agenda is consideration and approval of PCR number 21-007, zoning text amendment to Article 3. Ms. Murphy.
Yes, Mayor Pons and members of City Council. This is a request to amend the zoning ordinance district regulations to allow public art approved through the city's public art program in accordance with Ordinance 21-13. As you know, City Council approved Resolution 2103 in February of this year to create a public art program in the city and formed the Williamsburg Public Arts Council. The purpose of the public art program is to celebrate the city's past, present, and future with public art, to enhance the city's identity and economic vitality by encouraging people to spend more time in the city, engage with public art, to highlight and enhance the beauty and unique character of the city. The purpose of the Winsburg Public Art Council is to advise City Council on the acquisition, donation, commission, and/or funding of public art, and advises council on the acceptance of gifts and loans of public art and the removal of public art from the city's collection. The approval process for the acquisition and installation of public art is a 3 or 4 step process depending on whether City Council approval is required. The steps are staff review, courtesy review by the ARB, the Winsborough Public Art Council review and approval, unless City Council approval is required for projects that spend more than 10% of the city's and public art fund within a fiscal year. Planning Commission held a public hearing at the September regular meeting, and no one spoke at the hearing. The Commission recommended to City Council by a vote of 6-0 approval of the text change to allow public art approved through the city's public art program in the zoning districts outlined in proposed ordinance 21-13. So basically, the districts are the residential districts with city parks, the business districts, the economic development district, and the museum support district. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Just to be clear, the approval for arts has several different steps that it has to go through, and you
That's
mentioned
correct.
staff's review, ARB, Planning Commission, Council. And I guess I bring that up because art is very subjective, and I know that a lot of people, everyone sees it differently, and so the process that you've outlined here gives lots of opportunities for people's input. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Basically, what this text amendment does is allow the installation of art throughout the city. So in order to do that, we need to allow them in the zoning district. So this ordinance allows those in the zoning district. That's basically, and the Winsburg Public Art Council goes through the review process, and then they determine what gets approved and not approved, unless it's something over the 10% that would have to come to City Council for approval.
Any questions?
Questions?
Just one question. So I know that in previous discussions, there's been some concern about digital art, digital display. How does this have any effect on that?
I think if it's public art, it's got to be approved by the Public Art Council. If it's, as you know, in the zoning ordinance, if it's considered a sign, we don't allow digital display signage throughout the city. So it depends on what it is and what category it falls into.
So the determination would be made, is it art or is it a sign?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions?
So I would just say that Vice Mayor Dent and I are both on the Public Art Council, and we feel that there's a lot of council in a very deliberate way, and this is just one more step in the process.
Questions before I go to the public hearing?
None for me.
Thank you. With that, we'll go to the public hearing, allow for anybody in the audience to come forward to speak to this matter. Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing and come back to City Council for further discussion, or?
Yeah, I just say, I mean, this ordinance, obviously, it's necessary for City Council to fulfill one of our GIOs. And as Councilwoman Ramsey stated, her and I serve on this Williamsburg Public Arts Council, and we feel that public art is just another way to enhance the unique character and experience in Williamsburg. But also, I'd like to thank the members of that. We've had a few meetings. Again, another group of people that are very passionate about art. They put a tremendous amount of work in the first couple meetings, so we look forward to bringing that art to Williamsburg.
I have none either, so I'll go ahead and move to approve ordinance 21-13 as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Second?
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. Takes us to item B, consideration and approval of PCR number 21-008, request of the CW Condominium Association, RAC Enterprises LLC, and CW Enterprises 2 LLC to amend section 21-324 of the Zoning Ordinance. Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon. This is a request by CW Condominium Association, RAC Enterprises LLC, and CW Enterprises 2 LLC to amend Section 21-324 of the zoning ordinance to allow not-for-profit retail and distribution facility in the B2 Corridor Business District with a special use permit, and a special use permit to allow for a not-for-profit retail and distribution facility at 312, 312Z, and 314 2nd Street. The applicant intends to occupy the site to provide services to clientele during typical business hours from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. The applicant has provided a statement that gives the history of their organization and the proposed services to be provided at this location if approved. The 2021 comprehensive plan designates this parcel and all surrounding properties as corridor commercial, and the same are zoned B2 corridor commercial. There are no exterior changes proposed to the structure at this time, therefore no ARB was required. The Site Plan Review Committee met on September 2nd, 2021. The committee agreed with the comment from Public Works and expressed concern that there is not a bus stop nearby this location. They encouraged the investigation of having a new stop in this area of 2nd Street. The text amendment requests to add not-for-profit retail and distribution facility in the B2 Corridor Business District. And the applicant is requesting a special use permit to operate this business at 312, 312Z, and 314 2nd Street. According to their statement, they will operate Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Occasionally, they will receive weekend deliveries of donations when working with larger donation groups. They offer services to clients in person and do not conduct drive-through services. They anticipate using approximately 10 parking spaces during normal business hours and will have a van parked on the premises overnight. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 15th. Other than the applicant and the applicant's representative, no one spoke at the public hearing. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended to City Council approval of the text amendment to add a not-for-profit retail and distribution facility to the B2 Corridor Business District with a special use permit, and recommended approval of the special use permit to operate a not-for-profit retail distribution facility at 312, 312Z, and 314 2nd Street. I'm available if council has any questions, and the applicant's representative are also present.
Questions?
Ms. Burke, you mentioned the parking spaces that they didn't anticipate using more than 10 at any one time.
Correct.
I visited the site, but I was unable to tell parking spaces because they just recently paved the lot in this.
Yeah, they're working on restriping it. This is a current layout from the aerial photography that the city has, so they have ample parking on site.
And also saw in the request that there was not a need for any traffic study based on the use of this facility.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I also visited the site a couple weeks ago, and it looks like a good use, and it's my understanding that it's actually more space than they had before. Is that true?
I believe so, but they would probably be better able to speak to that.
And the mention about no drive-through, although I can see some partnership of maybe with the car wash, where maybe the donors could drive up for their car wash and have a coupon and then delivery next door. So I think that there could be some synergy there. In terms of the bus stop, and I think that's important, and perhaps Fish could work with our representative on the WADA board, which is now our planning director, Carolyn Murphy, to sort of see when the timing would be good to introduce that concept to them in terms of, because they've got a study going on right now. Also for clarity for the public, when the name of the LLC has CW in it, there's no relationship to Colonial Williamsburg, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Ramsey, do you have any questions?
That have already been asked and answered. Thank you.
Rogers?
Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Burke. I drove by the property and noticed that it is for lease at the moment. How long has it been on the market and vacant?
I would have to defer to the applicant's representative for that information, I believe, or property owner.
When I open the public hearing, maybe the applicant can speak first and answer that question.
Sure. Well, that's my only question is, you know, what a wonderful use of a building that's currently standing vacant and as has been stated for its use, doesn't require a parking study or traffic study in the area. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll open the public hearing and invite the applicant to come forward first and speak to this.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'm Vernon Getty. It's my privilege to be here today representing the applicants. Also here are Ron Campana with Campana family and Jack Trotter and Carolyn Sadowski with Fish. Just two sentences, a brief history of this property. It was acquired by the Campana family through various entities in the 80s and was originally a boat repair facility surrounded by barbed wire. Obviously, they took that down, renovated the building into what is now the First Med building. About 6 years later, added the second building, which was leased to Riverside at the time for a dialysis center. Obviously, have added open space and landscaping and green and generally upgraded the property, have been a good steward of the property over the years. As you just noticed, the parking lot has recently been repaved. You're all familiar with Fish and the great work they do in the community. We are here. Fish's misfortune was generated by actually CDR, who has purchased the community service building out on Waller Mill Road that has been Fish's home for many years. So they were looking for a new home and found it here. They are leasing the property from the Campanas. There is a signed lease subject only to the approval today. I think it's a great use for this property. Gets a good tenant in there. It's low impact and will allow Fish to get into this site in the city and continue its great work. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know Jack wants to address you briefly as well.
Any questions for Mr. Getty?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You just come up, state your name and address.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Jack Trotter, the current president of Fish Incorporated. I'm accompanied this afternoon by Mrs. Kathy Sadowski, who's our secretary and our institutional memory, so any hard questions go right to her. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you very briefly today. I hope that you all had the opportunity to read the fact sheet we prepared on Fish and the Fish operations. As you may know, the news that we received in February that another nonprofit had bought our building and we were going to be forced to move was not a welcome one. After extensively searching throughout the area, we reached out to the Campana family and located a perfect location on 2nd Street we're talking about today. This will allow the creation of a small Fish campus where we can continue our charitable efforts on behalf of the underserved in the city of Williamsburg and the surrounding area. Some salient facts about Fish that I like to emphasize. First, we're an all-volunteer, unpaid force of mostly retired men and women that have all been successful during our chosen careers and simply want to give back to our community. We provide food, an extensive clothes closet, an assortment of small housewares to our clients. Food is either donated or purchased. Clothing and hardware and housewares are almost all donated. All of our financial resources come from the exceptional generosity of our community. Without these assets, we simply could not operate. We pledge to be good neighbors in our new location as we've been at our current Waller Mill site. We are a diligent, committed group of your neighbors with a single purpose, to help our fellow citizens. That concludes my remarks. I welcome your questions or comments.
Do you have any questions?
Yep.
Mr. Maslin?
Oh, yeah, thanks. So in terms of the size compared to what you have now, is this more or less space?
This is greater.
Yeah.
We're working with just under 4,000 square feet in the area we're at now at 312 Waller Mill. This is about 7,000.
Oh, that's great. I know that during COVID, you had to pivot, and were you restricting clothing donations? Where does that stand now, and how are you going to?
With reduced clothing?
Right.
Well, the reason we stopped accepting clothing on the 1st of September was that we, fingers crossed, that we were going to be moving. And we didn't want to get the clothes in and then have to move it again. During the pandemic, if you remember, we did stop accepting clothing. And when we opened the doors, we got a flood work in. So we expect that to happen again when we are in these buildings and we're fully operational.
And just for the public's benefit, when generally do you think you would actually be moving into the new location?
When? A date? The Planning Commission asked me that, and I said 45 days, and they thought I was drinking something.
Nothing wrong with that.
We have two contractors that are looking at the minor demolition and reconstruction in both the buildings. I expect their comments or questions in about 5 days. At the end of the month, their offers. Then I think it's going to be at least 60 days.
Okay.
But we will continue to operate at the 312 Waller Mill site. We haven't stopped, and we won't.
No, I think that's good for everybody to understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Ms. Ramsey, any questions for the applicant?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, sir. If there's anybody else in the audience who'd like to come forward and speak to this matter, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and come back to council, and so I'll kick it off. I'd just like to say I think what Fish does is an important part of supporting members of the community, and the work is well received, and I think this is a good location for you all to continue that service to the community, and I appreciate that. I'd be remiss if I didn't take a moment to thank the Campana family, Dr. Campana and his parents, who opened First Med there so many years ago, but glad to see that Dr. Campana has been able to retire and fly off and do wonderful things. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I too want to just say thank you for the work you do in the community, and, great use for this building to bring that to Williamsburg, so we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I agree, and I also would like to thank the Campana family, and just sorry that Skip wasn't here to enjoy this. Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey? Comments?
No, just like to echo what others have said, that Fish is a valuable nonprofit to the community, and glad that the city has an available and suitable property for them to fulfill.
Just two quick comments from me to echo the rest of council. Director Trotta and Mrs. Sidlowski, thank you all very much for the work you do. I was able to just briefly click over to your website, and I see that your donations are currently paused, and so I'm excited that in a little bit of time, 60 days plus, you'll be able to accept those again in this new facility. And the second was to commend the applicant's counsel, Mr. Getty. I always appreciate the personal phone calls to double check that we understand what is being presented, and that if we have any questions, we can address you. So you all have wonderful representation, and you do wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So I move that City Council approve ordinance 21-14 and approve the requested special use permit to operate a not-for-profit retail and distribution facility at 312, 312Z, and 314 Second Street.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. Congratulations. Takes us to consideration and authorization for the city manager to execute a contract for the purchase of a new medic unit to replace replacement for the current frontline unit at a contract price of $319,438. Chief Eagle. Oh, am I out of order?
I think that's new business.
Oh. Sorry about that, Chief. I just wanted to get you up out of your chair. All right, yep, I've turned to C on the next page. So next is C, consideration and approval of PCR number 21-011, Quarterpath Williamsburg LLC, requests a special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% in the future development of townhomes and condominiums at 4020 Battery Boulevard. Ms. Burke.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Burke gives the presentation, I am a homeowner in this community and feel that it's not appropriate that I participate in discussions and decisions on this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Ms. Burke.
Good afternoon again. This is a request by Quarterpath Williamsburg LLC for a special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% for the property located at 4200 Battery Boulevard, property adjacent to what is currently Northridge Street. The applicant anticipates the encroachment will be up to 1.5 acres of slopes in excess of 30%. Some of the slopes are man-made because of the development adjacent townhomes and streets. If approved, the applicant plans to move forward with a site plan to develop townhomes and condominiums in this area. The 2021 comprehensive plan designates this parcel as economic development. Properties to the south and east are also designated economic development. Properties to the north are designated sensitive environmental areas and Chesapeake Bay protection, public, semi-public, medium-density single-family residential, and Colonial Williamsburg support. The property is zoned economic development. The properties to the south are also zoned economic development. Properties to the north are zoned RS2 single-family dwelling, museum support, and industrial. Back up a little bit there we go. This area is not within an architectural review district, therefore no review is required. The Site Plan Review Committee met on September 2nd, 2021 to review the application. There was a discussion about the downstream effects of the alterations to slopes at the capacity of Tutter's Neck Pond as the regional BMP for the development. The applicant stated that that the goal was to reduce the runoff of this area and the pond was sized to handle significantly more than the development that is currently proposed. There was a conversation about fill associated with some of the units. The applicant explained that some of the units would have basement garages so that the lots won't be filled but will be level with Northridge Street, but will appear similar to the adjacent constructed units at that street side with access on a lower grade on the inside. This request by Quarterpath LLC for a special use permit to encroach on slopes in excess of 30% at 4200 Battery Boulevard, and the applicant anticipates the encroachment will be up to 1.5 acres. This total area of disturbance for the project is 12.3 acres. Some of the slopes are man-made because of the development of the adjacent townhomes and streets. The proposed development contains 56 condominiums and 96 townhomes. The existing approved development for this area includes the Aura Apartments at 227 units, Village Green North, 160 units, Village Greens at 130 units, and the clubhouse that is currently under review. The economic development district the ED district of the development was approved with a proffer of 895 units. The additional 152 units proposed for this area known as Greenwood Village would leave 226 units left in the ED district development. The development of approximately 137.6 acres on the other side of Tutter's Neck Pond is zoned single-family residential with proffers. The developer intends to mirror the appearance of the townhomes along Northridge Street with a third-floor walkout basement garage at the rear of the unit. The condominium buildings will have parking underneath to reduce the parking footprint in the area. Staff has worked with the developers over the last 6 months to minimize the impacts of the proposed development, and the stormwater manager has received the required information and is satisfied that it meets the requirements of Section 21-626 of the Zoning Ordinance. Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 15th, 2021. The applicant, the applicant's engineer, and 2 individuals spoke at the public hearing. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended City Council approval of the slope waiver to encroach up to 1.5 acres for the property located at 4200 Battery Boulevard for the lots shown on the conceptual site plan. I'm available to answer any questions. Aaron Small, I believe, is available virtually to answer questions. Is that correct? The city engineer and the applicant and the applicant's representatives are also present.
Mr. Maslin, do you have any question for Ms.
Yes. So I'd like to thank Aaron and Aaron Small, the city engineer, for accompanying me out there to actually look at the site, look at the extent of the slopes, and understand what mitigation measures are happening with the vice mayor. And then a follow-up conversation I had with Aaron, Carolyn, our city planner, and our city building official was helpful. And thanks for, as part of our walkthrough, we actually requested that cross-section be added, which I think is helpful in the discussion. And during the open forum, will the applicant's engineer be here?
He is, yes, sir.
Because I'll have a question on that at that point. So one of the things, we've got this threshold here, this 30% threshold that says, okay, if there's going to be a development over 30%, then it needs to come through the Planning Commission to City Council to review. And in the staff report, there's different things that we can take into consideration. But some of the reasons that we actually want to review this is, number one, the storm water management. How is that going to be accomplished in developing on steep slopes? And could you just explain what our city engineer has done in terms of reviewing that?
I'm actually going to let, if Aaron's Small, I don't want to speak in his place because it's not my area of expertise, but if Aaron is available, he could probably better answer those questions.
To do with uses allowed, encroachments into the RPA, and they must submit a mitigation plan according to it. Then we have to regulate the stormwater runoff for the project to better protect those slopes. And then finally, what they do is they provide a condition where they actually treat more than greater than the normal water quality than they would normally be required to do. And so we looked at each of those four criteria, and this is outlined in detail in my memo, which is part of your council packet. And so what we did is we took into account each one of those so that we could take that in, so that we could approve this project or recommend approval.
And then one of the second things we look at is erosion control. So Aaron, can you talk to erosion control?
Well, one of the primary purposes of the slopes themselves are to protect and provide an added buffer to the streams and wetlands adjacent to our project. And so what we did is we were really concerned about upstream development causing increased runoff down those slopes, which would create erosion problems. In this particular case, we asked the applicant to look at each one of the, I believe it's 9 separate locations, and determine what the drainage area was pre-development as well as post-development. And because they are diverting most of the drainage area away from into a controlled stormwater system, the actual runoff going down those slopes is much less than what is occurring today.
Now, another area we're concerned about is, are we developing on fill, and how are we protecting the fill there? And that's been a very hot issue in James City County in terms of retaining walls. And as you can see in the cross-section, which we can talk about during the open forum, that the retaining wall is about 20 feet. So we'll be interesting to hear from the engineer how that's going to be engineered. Can you go back to the plan that shows the red zones? There. So I think this has been helpful because all the red areas show areas that are more than 30%.
Correct.
And the darker red ones, which is actually a crosshatch, shows where it's actually, where construction is impacting those. And it should be, one of the things that, one of my questions was, well, okay, we know that there's a minimum of 30% in the red zones. How actually high, what is the steepest slopes? And the answer came back, the majority of the slopes to be impacted are between 30% and 40%. Some of the man-made slopes, such as the soil stockpile and areas adjacent to the existing trail, can reach 65%. The side slopes adjacent to the stormwater discharge points can reach 60%. Since these areas are only for pipes, it is highly likely that these areas will not need be impacted to the degree shown. Any comments do you want on that?
Just a point of clarification, one of the conversations that staff had with the applicant was that because this is a special use permit, we told them to ask for up to a certain amount. They have not gotten into the fine-tuning details of site plans, so they anticipate the disturbance will actually be less than 1.5 acres, but we wanted to make sure they understood that if they were going to exceed what they were proposing, they were going to have to go back through the special use permit process. So I think in this case, the engineer has indicated that there may be areas that are shown as disturbance that may not need that much disturbance, but because they haven't gotten into the final engineering details, they're not entirely sure about that yet.
Okay, and so when City Council is reviewing this, we have to look at several different areas. And there were some comments during the public hearing in the Planning Commission from neighbors. So one of the things that we look for is when we grant this special use permit, is it in harmony with the character of adjacent properties and the surrounding neighborhoods, and with existing and proposed development? And maybe you could talk to, this is different from a lot of the special use permits we see that are maybe just for a block or for one development, because there's a master plan here. And the development rights are for that whole master plan rather than looking at density per block. And I think there was a little confusion on that. Could you maybe explain that?
Yeah, so the entire area, and I can go back to the zoning map because I think that might give folks a better perspective. I think it was on the previous presentation. So the entire area is actually this this brown area down here, and that includes the area where the Harris Teeter is. And then across the pond, it also includes this yellow area here. So there are density maximums that are allowed in all of those areas. And it's up to the developer as to how they want to allocate those densities. Those densities in the original approval included everything from single-family residential to assisted living to nursing home facilities. So they're allocated a maximum number, and then they can work down from there. And that was why staff included the existing approved developments in that area, just so that council and the public were aware of other items that have been approved for this area. I do think it's important to note, because this is going to be a subdivision of 51 units or more, this will come back before council again. They have to go through the special use permit process first to make sure that they can encroach on slopes before they invest money into the engineering details and site plan details and subdivision plat. So there will be future opportunities to comment on the layout of the development and the style of the development and that kind of thing. But they are essentially entitled to use the maximum number of dwelling units that they're zoned for.
And I think we saw during the Planning Commission meeting a little frustration with neighbors who had actually, maybe from a marketing presentation, that saw less density, right?
I believe that was, yes, that was their understanding, was that at one point it had been indicated to them that they had purchased properties along Northridge Street, and that on the other side of that would just be townhouses. And the concern was that I think that the additional density of condominiums and, additional townhouses that go back into that lot.
Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions for Ms. Burke?
No, I appreciate the presentation and also all of Mr. Maslin's questions. Thank you.
Rogers?
Only one question, Ms. Burke. Thank you as always for the presentation. Along Redoubt Road and Quarterpath Road there, has there been a traffic study at all done, or will there be in the future for the increase in units?
So my understanding was that when this development was approved, I think the initial approval, I'm gonna look to Carolyn, was in 2010-ish. There was a entire traffic study done for essentially the whole of the area, and that traffic study took into account the density that it was zoned for.
And that was for the entirety of the project rather than just what's
Correct.
there right now?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that is good to know. Thank you. No further questions.
When the development was approved back in 2010, I want to say that there was approval for 1,500 residential units in the different forms, apartments, condos. Is that about an accurate
Yeah,
number?
that probably includes both the parcel to the south of Tutter's Neck Pond and to the north, just because of how it's zoned. To the south is a different zoning district, so it's calculated differently, but that total number sounds about right.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Any other questions before I go to the public hearing? Thank you, Ms. Burke.
Thank you.
With that, I'll open the public hearing and invite anybody to come forward. Maybe the applicant would like to come first. Welcome, Ms. Downing. Dowling.
Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Dowling. I live at 10113 Squires Way in Toano. And I don't have any, I'm here representing Quarterpath Williamsburg LLC. I don't have any additional prepared comments. As you can probably imagine, we've worked very extensively with the city staff on very technical issues in this plan. And we do have our engineer here with us and a couple of our development consultants for additional questions.
Are there any specific questions for the applicant?
Just for the engineer.
Okay. Maybe the engineer can come forward and address some questions.
Mark, can you throw up that cross-section?
Welcome, sir. If you can just state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. I am Mark Richardson with Timmons Group. I live at 605 Prosperity Court in James City County.
Thank you. Do you have any prepared comments, or you just want to
No
question?
prepared comments.
Okay.
I'm here for any questions you might have.
Mr. Maslin?
Yeah, so we know that, retaining walls is a hot issue with James City County. And if we look at the building on the left here, it looks like it's going to be totally built on fill. Can you talk about how that gets engineered and about the engineering of the retaining walls? Because we're talking about a 20-foot retaining wall, correct?
Correct.
And I think one of the reasons James City County was having these issues was once the developer walks away from the project, it's the homeowners association that's responsible for maintaining that retaining wall. And one of the reasons they require a maintenance plan be part of this. If you could just talk to those issues.
So in this situation, this was a cross-section is probably the worst, I think, when you went out there and looked at the site. We have not done the engineering for the site yet, so we're going by some of the estimated elevations that we're going to have for finished floors. A lot of the areas that we're going to have the steep slopes where the buildings are the condominiums. Now, the condominiums are set up so that they have parking on the basement. So as you pull into the condominium, you're going to be on the lower floor and there'll be parking there. So that situation is going to be much different because the wall of the building is actually going to be the retaining wall. So in this situation, the retaining wall in the building has not been engineered, so we can't speak to exactly how this situation will come out. Sometimes we get into these, and as we go through the engineering with city staff, we may shift a building, we may move a building out of some of these areas that make it a little more feasible to develop. In this case, to have the wall of the building go all the way down and be the retaining wall would be a little bit, exaggerated in terms of height. So this situation might get adjusted during site plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Okay, the public hearing is still open. If anybody else would like to come forward and speak to this matter, please come forward. Just state your name and address for the record. Try to keep your comments to about 5 minutes. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Joanne Jenner. I live at 4125 North Ridge Street. The view from my house is the view you're looking at right there. It is very steep. In the neighborhood that I used to live in, one of my neighbors lost their whole backyard because of erosion. And erosion caused by taking out trees. They had to bring in 35 truckloads of dirt, and they used stone to refill. I don't want to see that happen across from the house I live in. I'm a great believer in nature and trees, and it seems like the city of Williamsburg is slowly going away from anything that would create fresh air in the community. I did note when which made me have a question. What will be done to change the runoff? Is that like piping underground?
So, Ms. Jenner, this is an opportunity for you to make your comments, and we don't have an exchange.
Okay. So that did away with some of that. I'm actually, some of this was for me, and I had a neighbor who couldn't come, so I also have a couple of things from her.
During our discussion, hopefully we'll answer maybe some of those questions. So.
Okay. You answered, actually, they answered several of my questions already, so that really shortened what I had. Strangely, I know most of you know that part of the Civil War was fought here in Williamsburg, actually fought in those woods. I looked up just a couple of statistics that I must have written on the back page. The Battle of Williamsburg was Fort Magruder. There were 41,000 federal troops, 32 Confederates. What I noted was the casualties. Union was 2,283. The Confederate was 1,682. And in that period of time, people were buried on the battlefield. That was just a thought I had early this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak to this? Welcome.
Hi, my name is Dora Sharps. I'm a neighbor. I live at 4143 Northridge Street, a neighbor of Joanne's. And my concern, because this slope is directly across from my home too, it's a wonderful nature preserve. There's a very large body of water going through that. It's actually 3 streams that go through that, which is they're freshwater streams. They're part of the Chesapeake Bay management area. So we know within 100 feet of that, it's an RPA, and there can be no development. But when I looked on city maps, I found that development of the protected management area for Chesapeake Bay is within 500 feet of the water, which brings it all the way up to Northridge Street. So even though this is zone economic development, I'm concerned that we're not taking into account that this is all part of the Chesapeake Bay protected area. And as such, we should be looking at the impact it's going to have on the water. There should be a soil analysis, pollution analysis, et cetera, especially with these steep slopes, the flat surfaces, what is going to happen to that land? So that's my question. Has that been taken into account? Thank you very much for your time.
And I didn't catch the last name. Shorts?
Oh, Sharps.
Sharps. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sharps. Thank you, Ms. Sharps. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and turn back to council for further discussion. Maslin?
Yeah, I think that it's good that we'll be seeing the site plan in the future, and I know that our building official is going to be looking specifically at retaining walls and maintenance plans for those, and at that point, there probably will not be a homeowners association established yet, but the leaders that would be future leaders there might want to be tuning in at that point and offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Mr. Small still with us? He hadn't dozed off.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Aaron. Walk me through a little bit more about in allowing developers to encroach on the slopes, they have to offer a more positive erosion control and sediment control and how this developer has done that so that it's less impactful on the Chesapeake Bay.
Right. We actually have 2 of the 4 criteria that are listed in the special use permit allow for enhancements. One of them has to do with protecting the slopes and the drainage area going down the slopes. One of the other items included in your packet was the pre and post development. Aaron, I don't know if Mark, can you show up the pre and post development figure, drainage area figure? Should be the pre and post development drainage area exhibit.
What's up?
Yeah, the table would work. What you see in the table is a list of, these are the different ravines and outfall areas that we asked them to analyze, where all of the water comes down, flowing into the bottom area, which is known as the Readout Road detention area. And then for each one of these areas, we were concerned about how much actual water is coming down those areas. And so what these showed is that by reducing that, they were able to change the I'm trying to pull this up myself.
We've lost you.
They were able to reduce the area in each one of these areas by nearly half of the drainage area. So what that does is reduce all of the water that's actually flowing down those slopes. The remainder of the water is then collected in underground piping systems in the drainage inlets, and then is conveyed safely all the way to the bottom of the slope, where it's then discharged directly into the wetlands area under controlled conditions. The other thing that we looked at is the last criteria of the special use permit has to do with the water quality calculation and the analysis that's done to determine how much their normal pollutant load would be. And what we've asked developers to do in this case, by normal Chesapeake Bay regulations and development, they are allowed to, they need to provide an 80% improvement factor on what their current pollutant load is. So it'll be 80% less than the pre-existing pollutant load. And then, but for our projects, we ask that they reduce it further to an additional 10% to 70% of the pre-development pollutant load. Now, they've designed Tutter's Neck Pond is actually the overall water quality treatment facility for the entire development. And so what we will do is the pollutant load that was allocated for this development will actually be greater than other portions of the development.
Well, and that's all good information, and it's maybe a little difficult for me to understand in my simple brain, but I hope the audience can make some good sense out of that. But essentially, what the applicant has done is it's making the runoff area and the effective runoff probably a safer environment in terms of controlling erosion by limiting how much water runs down those slopes. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Ramsey, do you have any questions or thoughts?
No.
Mr. Rogers?
I have none. None either. I understand the plan's been under review for a little over a decade now, and certainly trust the work of Aaron and Aaron, Mr. Smalls and Mrs. Burke, I should say.
Thank you. Mr. Maslin?
I'll make a motion.
Sure.
I move to approve the special use permit for a slope waiver in accordance with section 21-626 of the zoning ordinance as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. That takes us to item D on the right page, consideration and approval of a license for William and Mary to construct and maintain improvements to Lake Matoka Dam within the Jamestown Road right-of-way. Mr. Small.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion before you is a request by the College of William and Mary to allow an encroachment into the right-of-way of Jamestown Road. This is right at the Lake Matoka Dam. Lake Matoka Dam is a regulated facility, and so some improvements are necessary in order for it to meet the current dam regulations. And so the university has developed a set of plans that would create armoring along the back side of the dam, which is the east side of Jamestown Road. And so what they would do is putting articulated concrete block down it, along from the edge all the way down the slope, and then they would have two brick walls, brick concrete walls along the edges, and what they would do is help to funnel the water down that armored slope, and so therefore protecting the dam should it ever be overtopped in a heavy flood condition. This license is a little different than the license that that the university currently has. They currently have a license for underground utilities within the right-of-ways on adjacent properties. And so this separate license would be provided just specifically for the encroachment into the right-of-way for the dam, portions of the dam structure itself. And it would be a 40-year maximum license.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Any questions, Mr. Vice Mayor?
Mr. Small, during construction, I know there's some utilities that run through there. Will there be any disruption to the utilities based on just the walls that they're installing?
Some of the electrical lines will have to be relocated, but there will be no disturbance to the electrical service caused by those. And I believe there's also some communications lines that also have to be relocated out of the way, but no disruption to water or sewer services.
And then the other question was, do you know when they anticipate starting this work?
A lot of this work has to go through DCR state permit process for dams. And so those plans they're expecting that permit process to be complete fairly soon. They want to start, I believe it's next year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, two questions, Aaron. So a lot of times, the bodies of water like this, where you have a dam, there's sort of requirements downstream in terms of maximum, minimum, in terms of water flowing. Is that applicable with Lake Matoka? Is it feeding other bodies of water?
No, it actually serves as the headwaters for College Creek, but I do not believe there's a limitation on the water flow within that stream.
Okay, and then the second question is, with the new structures that would be installed, there was a mention in the staff report that the merging lanes on Jamestown Road would have to happen quicker. What does that mean in terms of where we're dropping to 25 miles an hour versus now?
It would basically shift at the same location. Right now, the merge lane is kind of right in the middle of the dam, even as you're going up the hill, where it merges from two lanes to one. And essentially, the merge would begin back closer to the intersection with Mill Neck Road.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions?
The only question I had was whether we had any pictures of the materials that are going to be used and what the view of the wall from Jamestown Road would look like. It appears that that wall will go pretty far into sort of in front of 950 Jamestown Road.
That's correct. We have not seen the actual brick, but my understanding is it will be a brick base with, I believe, a concrete coping cap on it. But that brick will also, since it's being done by the university, I suspect it'll be matching of much of their buildings and such.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Small, the change that you just described of where the merging of the lane happens, is that a permanent change or a temporary one while William & Mary completes their work?
It'll actually be a permanent change, and part of the reason is because of the encroachment. We needed to allow a little more room so that we could allow for the sidewalks and everything, and to provide adequate clear zone around some of the walls, as well as some of the light poles that have to be in front. And so by doing that, we are able to, by shifting the merge back, we gain a little bit more room, along the whole face of the dam.
Okay. The change in roadscape there and added to some of the work that William & Mary is doing, do you think that there will be significant disruption to traffic, or is that a pretty quick repainting of the lines?
It'll be significant during the construction. Essentially, the merge is going to move back even further because they're going to need that whole right turn lane and merge lane for the construction. There'll be a crane set up to lift these giant articulated block mattresses, as well as concrete trucks coming in to pour a lot of the other walls and other stuff that has to go in there. So it'll be a good bit of disruption, but only on that one merge lane. So what it'll do is the merge will just have to happen further up. So as you're coming down the hill. But then the minor shift in the merge lane will be a permanent back to about Mill Neck Road.
Okay, thank you. Those are all.
Thank you. No other questions. We'll go to the public hearing. Now, the public hearing, if anybody would like to come forward and speak to this, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll close that public hearing. Mr. Vice Mayor. Any comments?
No comments.
Yeah, well, so I think this is almost kind of a straightforward thing. Enhancing the bridge, making it safer, and meeting all the new guidelines is a positive step forward. So I certainly do support it. Is there a motion?
Yes. I move the City Council approve the granting of a license to William & Mary and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement with the university.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
So that takes us to monthly reports. And first we have the financial statement. Ms. Dameron?
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. I want to start the report with the COVID recovery report. Of course, this slide shows a lot of information. We have the fiscal 2019 September actual year to date. That's relevant because that was the last full year before COVID hit. We show the pre-pandemic fiscal 2022 projection where we thought we would have been had COVID not occurred. And then, of course, we have the fiscal 22 adopted budget. And where we want to focus our attention today is on the projections for September 2021 year to date as it compares to the actual results for September of 2021. And you'll notice the variance column gives amounts, and then we have the percentage above or below our actual compared to the projection. The numbers in red indicate that we're performing below the projection. Numbers in black indicate that we're performing better than projected. And as you can see, we have two revenue streams that are performing at this time below where we project it. And that's the personal property tax is about 20% below, equates to about $10,000. I'm not heavily concerned about that yet. Personal property is not due until December 1st, so this number will become a little more relevant in January when I'm given the December report. And then we'll continue to monitor the tourism sales tax moving forward. But our business and professional and occupation license, lodging, meals, general sales tax, and the $2 lodging tax are all performing better than what we projected at this point in time. And then, of course, you can compare the actual September to our fiscal 2019 and see that we're seeing getting very close in many cases, and in some cases just slightly ahead of 2019. In summary, we're doing well compared to where we were projected to be. I'd like to draw your attention now to the monthly financial statement that's included in the agenda packet, and specifically page 8. Page 8 is where we report on rooms and meals tax over the last 5 years, sales tax over the past 9 years, and the historic sales tax over the past 4 years. The top left-hand side of the page shows the room tax, and you can see that comparing September year-to-date 2021 to September year-to-date of 2020, we have a significant percentage increase there, about 211%. When I compare 2021 year-to-date to fiscal 2019, which would be August and September of 2018, you see an increase year-to-date of 3.1%. That increase is compared of a 9.4% increase of August 21 activity to August of 2018 of about 9.4%. And comparing September activity for 21 to September of 18, there's a 3.2% decrease. The top right-hand side of that page shows our meals. And you can see we have a 62% increase when we compare September year-to-date of 2021 to September of 2020. Comparing the year-to-date meals tax for September 21 to September of 2018, we have a 6% increase. Again, that's comprised of a 13% increase in August of 21 compared to August of 18, and a 1.6% decrease in September of 2021 comparing to August of 2018. The middle section of that page tracks sales tax. I'm going to try to speak very clearly on this. It can get a little confusing, but we work with the Commissioner of Revenue's office because the information on page 8 shows the actual revenue we received, and that's important because that's the revenue we're going to record for the year. But sometimes the activity for that month is netted, you have a transfer in or out, where a business is reported under the wrong locality number, and if they report it to us and it belongs to another locality, so we'll see that move out. And conversely, if they didn't report to us and it should have been ours. So looking at those adjustments, when you look at September 21, compare it to September 20, our report shows that we have a 21% increase. When I adjust for the transfers out in this case, that's actually a 24% increase. Then when I compare September of 21 to September of 18 and make the adjustments for transfers, September of 21 is below September of 18 by about 1.6%. And then finally, we have the historic sales tax. For September of 21 compared to September of 20, we see a decrease of 17%. And while I often like to compare to 2019, I don't with the historic sales tax in the first few months, because fiscal 19 was the beginning of that additional sales tax. And it took the state a couple of months there to get that revenue stream coming in smoothly, so it's not really comparing apples and apples. However, we have some very positive trends, and we'll continue to monitor those revenue streams very closely as the year progresses. I will note that the general fund expenditures are performing within budget. I also wanted to note in the utility fund, we begin to see our revenue increase as consumption's increasing as we have businesses open up. William and Mary is open, people are back in the office. So very positive trend there. That concludes my report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Dameron. You went over the room and meals tax and described by percentage the 1% to 3%. And to me, that's within a range of normalcy. I mean, every year we would see some fluctuations one way or the other, so it's good to see them come back. However, when you look at the transient occupancy tax, which is the $2 tax, it's down.
It's down.
Which means the average rate is higher. So we're not seeing the number of, my point is, we're not seeing the number of visitors that we saw in those previous year. It's just that they're paying a higher rate, particularly just for meals, or for rooms rather, but meals is, I think, pretty close to normal.
Right. But at least tracking in the right direction.
That's right. Mr. Dent?
Yep. Thank you, Ms. Dameron. No questions, just as you indicated, there's some positive trends. But, I know as we're moving out of the summer months, hopefully we'll see those trends continue. But at least there's something positive to take away from this. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, a couple questions, just so there's clarity in terms of the recovery report that the public's seeing. So the first column, FY19 September year-to-date actual. So for those who aren't familiar, that's looking at our financials 3 months into our fiscal year.
Correct.
Which begins July 1. So if we say FY19 September, is that September 2018?
2018, that's correct.
So we're looking at 3 years ago.
Right.
That column. And then when we compare it to the actual September 2021 year-to-date, which is at the end of last month, I think it's notable that we're up $100,000, right, over $100,000 than we were pre-COVID, right? In the bottom line there?
On the bottom line, yes.
So that's good.
That's
news.
good. That's good news.
Yeah, and I was also looking at what Doug mentioned in terms of, the $2 lodging tax. We see a 28% increase, yet we're seeing the actual lodging tax going up 87%, suggesting that we're not doing as well in terms of occupancy, but we're doing better in terms of rates, right? Thanks.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions? Rogers?
Thank you for the report, Ms. Dameron. This is always helpful to see. Thank you for clarifying on the personal property tax that we should be mindful of that at the start of the year. One of the things I might be curious to see, and I think I mentioned this before, is it's really helpful to compare these numbers to 2019 year to date and where we were. And as mentioned, the meals tax, for instance, is exciting to see that that's on par. I wonder if there would be a way to create a as time has gone on, graph to show how the variance between where we are in 2021 compares to where we were in 2019 to hopefully show the totality of our revenues in an upward trend towards the normalcy of 2019. I'm not sure exactly what that would look like, but I've always tried to do some mental math in my head to figure out how we compare and how we are getting slowly closer to more of a normalcy.
Sure.
So that may be helpful to see in a future COVID report.
Particularly having a quarter under a belt, because early in the year, sometimes it doesn't, you don't have a lot of data there, but we'll have that for you in November.
No other questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dameron. No other questions? So then also monthly departmental operating reports, anything to add there, talk about?
So as I told all of you, there was an issue with reporting data, with having the dashboards updated this month. I've been told, I have not verified personally, but that has been corrected, so they should be there, and we're certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have in the future.
One question for planning. So one of the things I like about the Planning Commission meetings is at the end, the chair actually gives a prediction in terms of what is going to be discussed the following month. And I think two months ago, we suggested the Planning Commission could benefit from a presentation of the neighborhood balance recommendations, so they have the full context for any planning issues that are coming before them. Carolyn, can you talk about it? I think that's been scheduled for later this month, right?
Yes, Planning Commission is scheduled at a work session on Wednesday, the 27th, I believe, at 4 o'clock, which is our typical time for our work sessions. And I'm going to review the Neighborhood Balance Committee recommendations with them. So that's scheduled for later on this month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Trivette, you sure you don't have anything else to add with your city manager report?
I do not, thank you.
Got it.
I think the agenda's long enough.
Welcome, Mr. Phillips. Is there a city attorney report?
No report. The city attorney will come back more learned than she was when she left.
Wonderful. Good news. All right, so that takes us to new business, and this first item is consideration and approval of resolution number 21-23 to amend the budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Ms. Dameron.
Yes, Resolution 2123 asks to amend the budget to carry forward some grants that we've received, and one carry forward of a grant that we typically issue. So in the general fund, we're asking to carry forward unspent Covet grant for municipal utility relief of $20,231. Also a carry forward for unspent Williamsburg Health Foundation grant from FY21 of $233,275, as well as a donation from the Garden Club in the amount of $1,200. In the sales tax fund, we have received in FY21 donation from William and Mary to assist with the cost of fire service. And we're requesting to move that forward, but to appropriate it to the fire station budget to help mitigate some of the cost escalation contingency required because of the volatility in material costs. And then in the tourism fund, we're asking to move forward $15,000 that was not expended in FY21 for a grant for the King's Meal, because they used the grant from 20 and intended to carry that money forward, but we have to have the appropriation on the books to do that. And then the utility fund, the $20,231 for the utility relief is a pass-through from the general fund. We need to appropriate that as well. Staff recommends that council approve Resolution 21-23 is written.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Ms. Dameron, I'm sure you can answer this, or Mr. Trivette, on the carry forward from the FY21 William and Mary donation. There was already some money set aside for a contingency because of, so this is adding to that contingency.
It's not adding, we're asking to put it to the new fire station because I believe about $1 million had to be reserved for contingency and the material costs.
You know, we just to sort of rewind the tape a little bit, as part of my negotiations with William & Mary for a redefined contribution to the city in return for emergency services, we talked about this one-time contribution of $200,000 as a direct result of our effort of building the fire station, considering that a lot of our responses are to the campus. And so what we wanted to do was attribute this money to the fund for construction. And what this will do is relieve a little bit of pressure, because as Ms. Dameron said, the COVID construction contingency that the council approved has tightened that budget up a little bit in terms of the fixtures and finishings that we need to do inside the station. We expect there not to be a problem, but if the contractor ends up using 100% of that contingency, it could get a little tight, and this $200,000 will help us a little bit.
Okay. Thank you.
No questions.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions? No, she's still with us. I don't have any questions either. Is there a motion?
Move to approve Resolution 21-23 as submitted.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey? Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
No questions.
Time delay.
Yeah. In case somebody curses. Okay. Ted, aye, but nay. You gonna vote?
And Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Okay. So that takes us on to the agenda. Let's see here. Let's see, I think I got the right one. Consideration and approval of Resolution 21-22 to establish an official intent for a future allocation of bond process to reimburse expenditure. Expenditures for the construction of a new police station associated with improvements. Ms. Dameron.
Our current CIP plan includes a new fire station at a project cost of $12,500,000. And then the current FY22 CIP budget, we have $738,000 appropriated. The intent was to issue bonds in early FY23. So what this resolution allows us to do is reimburse the city for any cost incurred, if approved, 60 days back and then moving forward to the bond issue. Now, this resolution has a stated amount not to exceed $13,750,000. Part of that, we typically, in addition to project cost, include bond issue costs. But we also increased that slightly based on the experience that we've had with materials on other projects. This resolution does not commit council to issuing bonds, nor does it commit them to issuing bonds at the stated amount. It merely allows us, should we decide to issue bonds for this project, to come back and pick up any cost expended prior to the bond issue. Staff recommends that City Council approve this resolution as submitted. Be glad to entertain any questions.
So just in general sense, what we're asking for is to approve the authorization for us to reimburse ourselves for money that we're spending today.
Correct.
Or whatever we may spend. And so if we were to issue a bond and take on debt, we would be able to essentially borrow that money, amortize that money over time, and pay ourselves back the cash.
Correct. Correct. That's correct.
Vice Mayor.
No questions, pretty straightforward.
No questions.
Ms. Ramsey, any questions? Aye. Okay, is there a motion?
I move that City Council approve Resolution 21-22 to enable expenditures made for the police station construction project to be reimbursed from bond proceeds.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey? Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
No questions.
Okay, Chief Eagle, now it's your opportunity to come tell us about the consideration and authorization for the city manager to execute a contract for a new purchase of a new medic unit, replacement for the current frontline with the contracted price of $319,000.
Yes.
Aye.
Today we asked,
Chief, if I could, maybe we can communicate with Ms. Ramsey that there seems to be some sort of delay. Maybe we can hang up and reconnect.
We'll hang it up and reconnect.
You just have to call her back. I mean, the delay, I don't know where she is, or what's associated with that, but it's certainly a good place to start.
Okay, thank you, Chief Eagle.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, today we're asking your consideration to purchase a new medical transport unit. This ambulance will replace a 2008 ambulance that by the time it's replaced will have over 87,000 miles on it and will have exceeded its normal life, projected life of 10 years by 4 years. We have this budgeted in our capital improvement plan through our apparatus replacement program. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What will we do with the current unit? Will we try to keep that in inventory, or would we want to sell it?
We will sell that through the city's normal means of dispersing of surplus apparatus.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. Could you talk a little bit, I know for those that are listening, if you hear 87,000 miles, they say, well, that's not a lot of miles, but could you just put that in perspective for?
Sure, that's a lot of hard city miles of emergency response, stopping and starting and going to the hospital. And we run 2 medical transports 24/7, 365 days a year. We have 4, and we have to constantly rotate them because of the maintenance and upkeep that we have to do on those. So our oldest will rotate off, and we'll sell that in surplus and replace it with the new.
So you answered one of my other questions. So you maintain 4 medic units in the fleet to try to distribute that call volume and make sure that they're always prepared to go. And then the last question was, can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned in the packet about safety improvements for the patient and the providers and how that drives the cost of these units?
Sure. They're constantly coming up with new upgrades and new opportunities to provide better service to the patients, better safety to the patient, better safety to our responders. One example on this particular unit is it will have built-in disinfectant with our day of COVID and viruses and transporting people who may have been in contact with someone. This has a built-in system of disinfecting the ambulance, was one example. There's certainly other examples with how ambulances are made, how they ride, the comfort of how they ride, and things of that nature as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Maslin?
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So it's a lot of money. It's sort of like sticker shock in terms of what we're paying for an ambulance now. I remember when I was the fund drive chair for the department, the volunteer fire department could actually pay for an ambulance out of their fund drive. And now I think that what we would spend for an ambulance back then won't even cover the cost of a stretcher now with all the safety features on the stretcher, right? But so we've seen all these enhancements which are good for EMS. In terms of the COVID disinfectant, is that a component that can be funded with CARES funds, and is it a component we can add to the existing medic units?
I would have to look at that and see. I would assume that it would be eligible for CARES money. I'm not sure about upgrading and what kind of costs would be associated with that.
Yeah. Also, could you talk about the philosophy on the I guess we've changed with the last one we bought, where you're using now a truck body, which helps in terms of maintenance and smoother ride, which is really helpful when you have spinal injury patients, right?
Sure, absolutely. This will be, the last ambulance we purchased was in 2017, was also on a truck body, which is an F550. Most ambulances are getting away from the old international box truck chassis and going with more of a standard truck body and chassis. It provides a much smoother ride, and it also allows us better opportunities for maintenance. You can maintain it at a regular dealership rather than going to a specialty truck maintenance
And what's, based on what you know now, how long do you think it'll take to get this one into service?
I don't have the exact date on that, but it'll be at least probably 8 months or better, if not a year. They're custom built, so they custom design all the compartmentation and everything, and then sit all that on top of the chassis. So generally, it takes 8 to 10 months. It's been designed, it's ready to go. So with approval, we'll be able to get it submitted quickly and get it here and in service.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We have Ms. Ramsey.
Is this better?
Yes, much better. Do you have any
No
questions?
questions. No questions.
I have none either. I had the chance to talk to Captain Beam the other day, and he was explaining to me the infrared sensor that would sterilize the cabinet between rides in the ambulance. So that was fascinating to learn of and nice to use some modern technology. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move that City Council authorizes the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement with FESCO Emergency Sales Horton Emergency Vehicles for a total purchase price of $319,438.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. That takes us to item D, consideration and authorization for the city manager to execute a contract with MVP, to make it short, for a part-time construction management service of the Williamsburg Fire Station, and a lump sum fee of $179,313.75. Chief Eagle.
Yes, sir. Also, we're here to ask your consideration to execute a contract with MVP for construction management services. This will be approximately 26 hours a week 25 hours of inspector on site, ensuring our quality assurance and making sure that everything is built to the specifications that we have specified, and also making sure all the submittals are correct and our payouts and everything is correct. We do have Jim Yatzik from MVP here today, who, if there's any questions from them, is available. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
It's been traditional and probably a good exercise to have this type of firm associated with a construction project, particularly one this large and intricate, to be a part of overseeing the contractor. And I think we did that here with the Stryker building even.
That's correct. This same company is on state, so this is a state contract price for their services. And they've done a lot of work with the city. They have a local office here, and they've actually been involved in the project since the very get-go. If you remember, they helped with with the initial interview process and selection and making sure that we understood all the proposals. And they were also assigned to the Stryker building here.
Thank you. Questions?
Chief, these funds were included as part of the original overall budget for the fire station project?
These funds were, yes, included in the soft costs that we talked about earlier that have become a little bit strained, but they are budgeted in the price of the project, yes.
And as Mr. Trivette mentioned earlier, the budget is starting to tighten up. So are there any circumstances that would create a price increase for the amount that is listed here?
Not for this amount. It's a state contract price, so we're locked in at what was set on the state contract. And it's for a number of hours, averaging 26 hours a week. There may be some weeks where there's less than that, but over the duration of the project, it'll average out to 26 hours a week, 25 with a on-site field inspector, and then an hour a week of a project manager, which is a higher level Class 3 contractor that oversees the project.
All right, thank you.
I had a few questions for Jim if he's available.
Mayor Pons, members of council, yes, please, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
So, it's great that you're able to provide the service for the city. And can you explain that this is a design-build contract? So the twist is that the architect, the engineers actually report to the contractor. How does that make your job more challenging in terms of, keeping the quality control going?
Sure, good question. And under what they call the more traditional design bid build, where you have the architect working directly for you, that architect is in more of an agent role, so they're representing you. So with design build, they're working for the contractor, so they're not in that traditional role of directly representing the city as the owner. So that's where we see our role as more important, because instead of us collaborating or working with the architect, as both of us being your agent, it really comes down to just us that's representing you out in the field. So we consider the other stakeholders, they're partners in this process, but at the end of the day, we feel like we're really the party that has the main responsibility is your advocate. You have an architect working for a contractor, good contractor, but we are really in the role of representing the city, and really we'll be the only person in that role versus the traditional.
Thank you. Could you remind us about, we've set up this contingency, the COVID escalation cost. Sure. Can you just remind us about your role in that and how you would be, verifying increases in those costs?
Sure. Yes, and of course that's it's unique to historical construction, but it's certainly getting a lot of use and attention. In the last year, there's been really kind of off the charts, unprecedented increases, especially in 2021 with materials across the board, steel in particular, copper, anything related to petroleum. So we were involved in helping the city craft its escalation clause that was incorporated into the design builder's contract. And what it basically does is it set aside approximately $1 million to be used as needed basis for those escalations. And what happens is we've set a baseline, so that the baseline is whatever the pricing was that they gave us earlier this year. We've got documents that support the baseline. So as the contractor is requesting, they have to come to us and we put it in front of the council for approval of the use of those funds. They have to support that, so they'll have to have backup that we can compare back to those baseline numbers, basically prove their case to us, and once we verify it, we'll come and discuss it with the chief and ultimately make recommendations to the council about whether or not we think it's a proper use of the contingency.
Yeah, thanks. Now, one of the things that we're concerned about is schedule, and that's been somewhat of a moving target since the original proposal. But I think that most of us would agree the most important schedule is the one where we minimize the time for the firefighters and medics out of the station. Where do you see that? Or you think we're at a point where they can lock that in and or improve it?
I think we're set right now at about 15 months of construction, and that's probably what we'll end up facing. Just I think because of these uncertainties, we're seeing lead times really get extended on material. So unfortunately, there have not in the last several months been many opportunities to accelerate projects. The best that we're able to do is be able to maintain our schedules. So we definitely understand that. So once we lock in that schedule, I think we're agreed around that 15, 16-month time period. One of our roles will be, of course, monitoring the process, making sure that if for every reason there's something that the contractor needs from the city or city staff or any other outside sources, to make sure that any of those obstacles get knocked down to help keep them on schedule. But I think we also want to make sure we're picking the right time for the firefighters to move into their temporary location. we certainly don't want to move them and have the building sitting there for a few months. So if things are tracking, I think we're looking to have demolition sometime in January, February. And that's really the closest to that time period. I think we want to get a move is what we'll do, so we can minimize that time period as much as possible.
Thanks. Now, my last question is around the commissioning agent, which is just as important in a project like this as the project manager. When I scanned through your scope, I didn't see what your role was in terms of working with the commissioning agent. How do you handle that?
We're actually, and I think it's a separate proposal. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but we are the commissioning agent on the project. So we'll be and we serve that role a lot. I think we believe we served a similar role with Stryker, where we were the clerk of the works, but also providing the commissioning. But it's just important for commissioning to be involved from the very beginning of the project. So, in fact, I think they're just getting ready to do a review of the design plans to make sure mechanical systems are designed properly, and they'll be engaged all the way through closeout and even beyond into the kind of the warranty phase. Before the warranty is up, they'll come back and make sure that things are still good and not in need of repair under the warranty.
Now, is the commissioning agent staffing, is it separate from the project management in terms of actual personnel, or is
it is separate. We have a commissioning, it's just in the matter of expertise. We have an inspector who is very good with general day-to-day construction, and then we have a commissioning person whose expertise really is totally mechanical HVAC systems with some electrical. So we'll be collaborating schedule-wise, but the roles are different. There's some diagnostic testing that goes along with the commissioning, and they also won't be here. That's much more periodic. They'll do maybe a visit a month, but it'll be much less regular than our daily inspector. But there'll be collaboration between the two. We'll be giving our commissioning expert information about what's going on with the schedule, just so we make sure that they're coming out here at the right time.
Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
I have none either.
I move that City Council authorize the city manager to enter into a contract agreement with MVP for a part-time construction management services that encompass the demolition and reconstruction of the Williamsburg Fire Station for a lump sum price of $179,313.75.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Okay, so next is consideration and approval of ordinance number 21-17, an ordinance to amend Article 3, Division 1 of Chapter 18 and Division 2, Section 18 through 78 of the Code of City of Williamsburg to assess real estate property on a calendar year scheduling beginning January 1st, 2022. Stammering.
So this ordinance does propose moving the real estate assessment from a fiscal year basis to a calendar year basis while maintaining a fiscal year budget and the same due dates that we currently have. So it's a hybrid approach. And the flow of that process would be, assessments would be from January 1 to December 31st. Assessment notices would be sent to the property owner by March 1st. Appeals to the real estate assessor would be accepted into March 31st. Appeals to the Board of Equalization would be accepted into May 1st. And the Board of Equalization would dispose of any cases by June 30th, and assessed values would be certified July 1st. Payments would be on a fiscal year basis beginning the July immediately following the January 1 assessment. They would be paid in 2 installments, with first half due December 1st, second half due June 1st of the following fiscal year. So, for example, the first calendar year assessment would be January 1, 22. The first installment would be due December 1st of 2022. The second installment would be due June 1st of 2023. Both of those revenues or due dates fall within the fiscal 2023 budget. This proposal, or the proposed process, is good for both the city and the residents. From the city standpoint, we publish the public notice early. That has to go in about February. So we would have exact numbers to publish. And also, we would be able to calculate the amount that should be included in the proposed budget. Our residents would be aware of their assessed value before the public hearing and before budget discussions. So I think everyone benefits from the proposed change. Staff recommends that City Council approve Ordinance 21-17 as submitted. And I also have Mr. Green, our city real estate assessor, here this afternoon. Both of us would be willing to happy to answer any questions you might have in regard to the change.
But just to be clear, the payment cycle hasn't changed.
No.
So it's still December 31st and June 1st when payments are due. It's just when we do the assessment, it makes that date align before City Council and City Manager begin the budget discussion.
Correct. Okay. And we have that information out on the street before we're into the public hearing and the budget discussion. So people would be aware of what their assessed value and any proposed changes to a rate, how that would impact them.
Yeah, no questions. Thanks to city staff for working on this, because that's one of some feedback that we heard from the community after the last budget process is they weren't aware of how much their assessments were going to increase. And as you stated in your remarks, I think this is a win-win for the city and for our residents. So thank you for bringing this to us.
I agree, and I know after the last budget process, Councilmember Rogers and I got an email specifically to that point and the frustration the residents had. But I do have some questions for Derek, if he's available. So Derek, first I want to make sure we thank you for what we put you through this last go-round. I don't know that most people realize that because we postponed voting on the rate increase, you had to be prepared for 4 different scenarios to send to everybody. And then once we voted, you sent that one to the printer, correct?
Correct.
And your department is a total of 2 people.
2 people. Brooke had 4 tax notices ready to go.
So that was great. So I think this will be a win-win for everybody. But could you maybe talk about your role as an assessor in the current climate where we're seeing, housing prices spike, but not a whole lot of inventory. So how challenging will it be if you don't really have comps in specific neighborhoods to do the next assessment?
It can be very challenging. You're really looking for match pairs. You're trying to find neighborhoods that are similar. So we're fortunate this cycle. There has been a lot of activity this spring and this summer. What we're seeing in the last 3 to 4 months as days on market is within 10 days. That's probably on the high end. And you're seeing bidding wars, which is a challenge. It's going to be unprecedented in the assessment process.
Now, some people are predicting this as a blip that, the prices can't stay high this long. When you're doing assessments, do you take that into consideration to sort of avoid this, spike here and then next year we got a big dip? How do you approach that?
It's challenging because this time we're going to be cutting off values January 1st. So we're going to be monitoring sales up until that point. And even though we're sending out notices March 1st, we're still going to have a buffer between January 1st and by the time we send them to the printing company, say in mid-February. So there's going to be a little time to still monitor to make sure our projections are still valid. But we'll see what happens in the market. My firm belief is I can't imagine it continues at this pace, but I could be surprised. I suspect I will.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Ramsey, do you have any question?
No questions, just to reiterate that I believe this is a good move for our residents and for the staff, and I'm glad that they were able to find this hybrid model.
No questions for me either, Derek. Thank you very much for your work, and I'd only commend Councilman Ramsey for being the starting point of this idea and working with staff to consider a hybrid model.
So I think everybody's said it. This is, I think, a positive step for everybody involved, and look forward to better communications with the residents, particularly as we may or may not have to have a discussion of a tax increase next year. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Yes, I move that City Council adopt ordinance 21-17.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Takes us to F, consideration and approval of an award of $30,000 from the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund to the Williamsburg Downtown Association, I imagine. Handling that.
Yeah, so Mayor, I can speak to that. As you know, we've discouraged people from coming to work that they're not feeling their best. Mr. Smalls was one example, joined us virtually, and also Miss Adams is out today with a similar affliction. So this item is brought to you on behalf of the Downtown Williamsburg Association. As you all know, that's the organization that the council encouraged being created to manage a Main Street operation for Williamsburg. And so as they are in their initial stages of putting together their operations, they have identified the opportunity to have a sort of signature annual fundraising event that includes having a Santa downtown that will do pictures of with family and children, and then on the weekends do pets. And hopefully this will be an annual thing for them to generate revenue. In order to get that off the ground, they would like the council to award them $30,000 from the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund. And the staff recommendation is that you do that.
Any questions?
Have there been any discussions about, having 4 Santas in downtown, that some rules like city council, they can't be congregating together?
Yeah, right. There are going to be a few jolly white guys downtown, and so we're going to have to do our best to try and manage that. I think working and coordinating with all of the different entities that provide a Santa opportunity will be able to manage the chaos.
Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, do you have any comments or questions?
No questions, thank you.
One question for the applicant, if you want to come up briefly.
Yeah, I just wanted to be present to provide any answers if necessary, but I'm on the board of the Williamsburg Downtown organization, and to the Santa conflict question. Yeah, we're trying to collaborate with some of the other entities downtown and make sure that there's not static across events. So the reason we're choosing on the weekends to kind of limit the photos ostensibly to Santa paws shots with pets is that the Williamsburg Christmas market is taking place on weekends, and they do have a Santa over there a few blocks away. So we're kind of obscuring our event a little bit on the weekends and trying to dovetail well with them. And then I guess of note is that the gentleman that we're working with for the Santa Claus event is the principal Santa for the Yankee Candle Factory. And so we kind of saw an opportunity to continue that tradition for families, but bring those folks downtown and then dovetail some organizational efforts around the event to try to get people out to local merchants while they're downtown. So the spirit of the event.
I'm excited to keep it going. I'm sure that Santa is known well from some of the families that have gone routinely. As I understand it, Ben, during the week, families can take pictures with that Santa, and the weekend, pets. Are those mutually exclusive? Or will whole families with their pets be allowed to take a picture at one time?
We're willing to work with them. Basically, it was just kind of a nod to trying to not actively solicit, kind of the traditional Santa photo business while there's, a Santa around the corner in the other market. So we're just trying to kind of play nice and have a shtick for the weekend. It's a little different, but yeah, we'll let them take whatever shots they want once they're in the door.
It's a good one. I'll be there on the weekend.
All right.
Those are all mine.
Thank you. Thank you for coming forward. Yeah. All right, so I can support this. I see even with 4 Santas and maybe the conflict that might engage, but it's bringing more people downtown. I think that on top of the Christmas market that's going to be there, the 3 grand illuminations, it should be a robust December for everybody, and hopefully the merchants will be able to take advantage of that. So, is there a motion?
I move that City Council authorize $30,000 from the Tourism Promotion Contingency Fund be awarded to Williamsburg Downtown for its inaugural Photos with Santa event.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Mayor, before we move on, we probably should clarify, because I'm sure we have a large contingent of children that watch the city council meetings. So we should probably just clarify that all 4 of those Santas are duly authorized representatives of the real Santa who will be busy in the North Pole.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so item G, consideration and approval of proposed ordinance 21-16, an ordinance to amend various sections of Article 8, Chapter 9 pertaining to the tour guide licensings to apply a more comprehensive approach to require background checks for licensed tour guides. Ms. Shelton was here Monday and briefed us on this. We do have Assistant City Attorney Joe Phillips with us if we have any additional questions. But I'll go right into, is there any comments or questions?
I came up with one additional question. Outside of Colonial Williamsburg, how many other vendors does this impact?
I don't have the number of how many different companies there are that have licenses with the police department, but there are several.
Several, okay.
Questions? Ms. Ramsey, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't. I think it was covered sufficiently on Monday.
Thank you. I think this is fairly benign change and certainly makes it more equitable between all the tour guides. So I support it. Is there a motion? Who's got it?
So I move that City Council adopt proposed ordinance 21-16.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Thank you. Item H on the agenda is consideration and approval of Resolution 21-24, a resolution to participate in the National Opioid Settlement.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, you guys, the council was briefed on this item in closed session and asked us to bring this forward for your consideration today. I think that Ms. Shelton's done a pretty good job of summarizing the action on the agenda. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer them.
And so just for everybody to know, I guess Virginia was awarded some $22 billion to be paid out in an opioid settlement. And this authorization will allow the city to participate in that. Not knowing exactly how much we may get in the future or how those payments will be made, I think council all agreed that we wanted to participate in this opportunity.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, based on Ms. Shelton's brief to council, is that there are restrictions to spending the money. It's not just go into the general fund and spend it the way we choose. So there are some restrictions associated with the funding.
Well, and also we know that off the top will be some significant attorney fees, and this will actually help the state in terms of making their case.
But with those restrictions, I'd only add Williamsburg certainly has had some cost for Narcan being a life-saving, something to give to someone who's experiencing an overdose, and certainly some counseling afterwards. So we'll be able to put the funds to good use.
And I have no questions or comments.
So I'll move that City Council adopt Resolution 21-24.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
The next on the agenda is consideration and approval to exercise first right of refusal to purchase of 130 acres located at 409 Oak Tree Road in York County, abutting the city's existing watershed property at Watermill Reservoir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you all know, we talked about this during closed session earlier this week. The opportunity has been brought to the city to execute a first right of refusal for this property at 409 Oak Tree. It's 130 acres directly adjacent to the watershed and to the Watermill property that we own. And, back in 1991, this journey really began with this property. The city took a prudent step of executing a conservation easement for the entire 130 acres to try and reduce the threat to the watershed by eliminating lots of different types of uses that could happen there, particularly large-scale development. Now we find ourselves in the place where the current owner would like to dispose of the property, and the conservation easement that we executed actually granted us a first right of refusal, which means we get the opportunity to buy the property at the price offered under an accepted contract. And the City Council has 15 days to consider that opportunity, so we're well within that window. And what we'd like to do today is put this on the agenda for your consideration. The staff's recommendation is that the council proceed with acquisition.
So back in 91, we had purchased the right to put conservation easements on that property.
Yes.
Is it impossible that if we didn't own that property, that a subsequent owner could go to court and have those easements lifted?
It would be very improbable that the subsequent owner could succeed with that. On the other hand, there could certainly be an effort to try to remove it, and that would be costly.
And that kind of gets to my point about the reason I think we should purchase this property is so that we can control the future of how this land will be used in perpetuity, at least until we decide to dispose of it, which I don't think would be in anybody's best interest. Clearly, it's been a goal for the city to provide its own water supply to the residents, and foresight of former city council members years ago, we purchased this land. And over the years, we have purchased other parcels to help protect the watershed so that we can continue to maintain the quality of water for our residents. And so this being a large tract of land, I think right there at the head of the stream that runs into Waller Mill there, I think it's important that we purchase it and protect its use.
I agree with the mayor. I think the only way we maintain absolute control over it is if we purchase the property. And again, it is a sizable piece of property at 130 acres. And Mr. Trivette, if I recall from our conversation previously, we only have this one first right of refusal. It doesn't convey if the property sells and then we come back the next time it changes hands, we don't have a first right. This is our only first right of refusal.
That's correct.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what the Vice Mayor said about that. This is our one-time opportunity. Refresh my memory in terms of that 21 years, was that, so we had a previous city council that was looking forward, not knowing when this might come up, but was there a 21-year sunset provision after the last council member on that council died? Was that for the conservation easement?
No, that only applied to the right of first refusal.
Okay, so that was just...
The conservation easement is in perpetuity.
In perpetuity, okay. So the good thing about this is we don't have to make a decision right now as to what we're going to do ultimately with the property. You know, we may come up with a lot of different ideas. We may come up with a way to monetize some of it. But this is our one opportunity to take control of that destination there.
I would add, a lot of the water that fills the reservoir is a number of springs upstream and adjacent to that reservoir. And those springs are fed by open land. The more development that happens, the less efficient the spring water output is going to be. That was one consideration that played into buying the rights that we already have.
Thank you.
Ms. Ramsey, any comments or questions?
None that haven't already been made. Thank you. I'm in full support of purchasing the property.
And as am I. This isn't usually something we would do in the purchasing of property outside the city limits, and it's partially visible, but clearly there's a stream that goes into the Warlow Mill Reservoir. And so, as been stated, it's been the strategy of past councils to protect that natural resource. And in other parcels shown there on the screen, but that are not highlighted, the city in the past has purchased those so that we can make sure that the area surrounding Waller Mill is protected. And I think this one, in being a large tract of land and certainly a source of water, falls into that same strategy. So I am as well in support.
Good. Is there a motion?
Certainly. I move that city council exercise its right of first refusal and direct the city manager to take related actions to purchase the property located at 409 Oak Tree Road.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Okay, next on the agenda is the appointment of Vivian Prescott. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have a motion?
Yes. I move that city council appoint Vivian Prescott to the Williamsburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board of Commissioners for a term to begin immediately and expire on June 30, 2024.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.
Okay, so that takes us to item 9 on the agenda, which is an open forum. If anybody would like to come forward and address council on any matters, please come forward. Please come forward and state your name and address at the microphone.
My name's George Valashinas. I'm at 430 South Henry Street, and I wasn't expecting to come to the meeting today. That's why I have street attire, so sorry about not
You look fine, sir.
fitting in with everybody, but we were the ones that were going to purchase the property for Miss Darst, 409 Oak Tree Court. And needless to say, we're really disappointed. I've lived in Williamsburg for about 2 years now, full-time, and I've talked to a bunch of individuals in the city government in relation to our property. You have an amazing team here. Never dealt with anybody except for who's on the call here.
Councilwoman Ramsey.
Yeah, I've met her a few times. But anyhow, some of the facts that y'all had said, I think are a little bit wrong, but anyhow, the staff apparently did some research, but I think some of the information that was used doesn't necessarily fit with the decision that was made. I know y'all talked in private and all that, but anyhow, I just wanted to put a name with a face, and we already improved some property here in Williamsburg, and I guess we'll just find something else. So I totally understand where y'all are coming from for the good of the general public and everything, but our vision kind of fit in with the conservation easement, and unfortunately, we were going to spend the money and not have the city spend it. So I don't have a prepared statement, but I don't want to ramble on, but anyhow, we're really disappointed, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. We'll certainly appreciate you coming forward and look forward to having more conversations with you. Would anybody else like to come forward? Seeing none, I'll close the open forum. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Second.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Ms. Ramsey?
Aye.
Mayor Pons?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Dent?
Aye.
Mr. Maslin?
Aye.